Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of I Cast Fireball, where we will be doing a final word of recall. I'm Thomas, your DM and host for this word of recall, and around the table we have...
I'm Mickey, and I played Malamara.
Jacob, and I played Lance Thalen.
I'm Ned, and I played in the past tense, which is a weird thing to say, Fleeple.
And boy, oh boy, did we all play our hearts out in this season of ICF. What a fun time it was, everybody. We're going to talk at length tonight about how we felt Season 1 went, what were our favorite moments, what were some of our moments that we wish we could have explored more, etc. But we're not going to answer these questions based off of what we want to answer. It's because you, the fans, have asked us these questions yourself. You have sent us these questions in. We have 44 questions, is that right?
That is correct. So we gotta go fast.
Gotta go fast here, everybody. So let's just dive right in, because that's why you're listening. You just want to know the meat. You want to know the gossip. So let's start right now. Ned, we doing the fate dice again?
Yeah, so for those who haven't heard so far, I'm going to roll a fate die, which has pluses, minuses, and blanks on it. If I roll a minus, that means we're going to do either a character-specific question or a campaign moment question. I think Jacob usually handles those ones. If we roll a blank, that is a Lonely Thomas question. I will be asking those ones. And if we roll a plus, that is a behind-the-scenes question, and Mickey will be fielding those ones. So,
roll away.
First roll, that's a blank. Lonely Thomas time.
Son of a biscuit.
Yeah. Just like last time.
Just like every time. It's a loaded dice.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, I'm ready.
The first question. This comes from Mikkel. What was Vandal's spellcasting ability? Was the scroll that he had something he would have had a better chance of using, or was it pretty much his last resort as well?
Yeah, so I think I answered this a little bit, I think in Discord, in our patron exclusive Discord. That scroll that he had was not something that he could have used, actually. His spellcasting ability, he was a sorcerer, which sorcerers can't technically read from scrolls because they're not academics necessarily in magic. At least that was my intent. But that scroll would have been used by a trusted advisor or somebody that he was like his right-hand man that he would have gone to, because Vandal, although he wish he could do everything, can't do everything, and he likes to keep things close to the chest and make sure he has a way out, so to speak. So and he likes to use people as much as humanly possible. So use them to their fullest abilities until they can't be used anymore.
Sounds like Vandal to me.
What a tool.
What a guy. Next up, we've got a minus.
Campaign moment. All right, this is coming from Just Evening. They are asking, what are y'all's favorite character interactions from within the party?
Yeah, I have been thinking about this one. I think my favorite interaction between Fleeple and Lance was when we were doing the buddy cop in Neverwinter, or was it Waterdeep? I can never remember which city it was.
Everywhere we did it. It was fun.
Yeah, doing the buddy cop thing where we were both various brands of southern accents. And my favorite interaction between Fleeple and Mal was underneath Candlekeep after there was kind of the big blow up, and Mal and Fleeple were just kind of looking over the sort of ledge into that lower area, and Fleeple was all like, stuff is coming back to haunt us. And after we had that interaction, Mickey and I actually talked to each other. We were like, I think that's the first time Mal and Fleeple have like actually just sat down and chatted with each other.
Yeah,
it was a powerful one.
I think for me, that was what I immediately thought of with Mal and Fleeple, but I also really liked their goodbye, because I had written stuff for like Lance and Mal, but Fleeple's was so much more like genuine and like improv-y, I guess. And I like was really getting emotional when we were recording it, and I was like, oh, it feels like I'm saying goodbye to like real people, like my real like character friends. And I really enjoyed Mal and Lance talking about the bow outside of the Council of Winterdeep, which was another like big blow up moment, and right after a big blow up coming down to like a calm place, and that emotional intensity is always really fun. And as a group, I think the funniest moment as a player watching the Jhank squad was when we all had that guy tied up outside of the cultist camp, and we're all like, we need to kill him, right? We need to kill him. Nobody wants to do it. Like all of us as a players were like, I don't want to do it. And so finally, like, Ned, you're just like, we're going to do it. It's fine.
Burn him. Just do it.
But if we had video of it was very funny to watch us all go like, I don't want, okay.
I would say for me, favorite interactions is very similar to what was said already. Ned with Fleeple and Lance. Anytime there was the buddy cop thing going on, or when they would like start to talk about like the absurdity of sometimes situations where they would get into like, hey, what was up with that? Yeah, I don't know. And like they would go on little rants, like about like 30-second rants, and they were always the best to just bounce, and Ned and I bouncing off of each other's energy from that. For Lance and Malamara, outside the Council of Waterdeep was very good. Also, just at the end of fighting Vandal himself, it was very good because it was very much a clean moment of they've both been able to relieve themselves of their past just mistakes and burdens, and it was very much like we're here for each other now. We don't have anything tied up to any other motive. It's just pure friendship and being there for each other, which I loved.
Mm-hmm.
One last real quick thing. I am really going to miss Lance going, Fleeple! In his very exasperated way. All right. Next question. That's another blank. Okay, this is a question that was asked by everybody. What are the D6 rolls about? How does that way of randomizing encounters work?
Yeah, the D6s, man. Like I said, I think I mentioned that in a commune with Dungeon Masters, some sort of crunch squad. I stole that from Dungeon Dudes who stole that or used it from other systems. So it's not unique to them. It's not unique to me, but it really kind of helps solidify in my brain the purpose of random encounters, which I never understood in like old school 3.5 Pathfinder adventures. It's like, it just seems like you're throwing a battle at somebody just to throw a battle at them, which can be fun sometimes, but when you're narratively, it doesn't make sense. But then when I kind of picked up from Ned was describing to me once about like allowing the randomness of the story, like using that randomness to push it forward like an improv. I was like, oh, I get it. But as a dungeon master, I don't want to force a random encounter on them, right? Because then that's me injecting what I think would be cool. So therefore, that's where the D6s came from. The D6 is a simple mechanic where if everybody in the party rolls a D6, and you can set successes or failures, and if there are so many failures, then a random encounter does occur, and etc. So I used, if a 1 was rolled by anybody, a random encounter would occur, or something bad would occur. Now, what that bad thing was going to occur was highly dependent on where they were, what was going on. Are they on their way to the caldera? That's when giants show up, because they're also on their way to the caldera at the final battle, in that journey where Fleeple turned into. And so that was a possible encounter. It wasn't the giants immediately attack. It's just, this is a possible random encounter. But I think sometimes people would roll a 6 as well, which would be a success. So if there was a 1 and a 6 rolled, it was, okay, a random encounter does occur, but there is a benefit on the adventurer's side. So they would get some sort of benefit narratively or have the high ground, so to speak.
That's interesting. So while also being an encounter generator, it's also a story momentum enabler, I guess you might say.
Yes. And it removes the guilt from me by trying to force something on you, but allowing for randomness to be injected into the story that nobody has control over, because we don't have control over our external forces. That's why inside the caldera, in the lava tubes, the three of you defeated a bunch of people and you were deciding what to do. I was like, well, I can't just let them stay here without the possibility of something occurring. So I needed everybody to roll, because it wasn't going to guarantee a random encounter in that hallway at the last battle, but I needed to have the possibility pop up, since real life happens and people do patrol and randomness happens. Like, somebody's going to possibly walk down that hall even though they've never done it before. And then you guys rolled a 1 and I was like, well, here we go. Yep, a whole squad shows up while you're talking. It wasn't because you were talking too long. It's because the intensity of the situation demanded that some, okay, Mickey, yeah, not talk. She did quotes, not talking too long. But I mean, so I guess I am going to walk that statement back a tiny bit, because if I feel like action, or if things are, or if we're having like a lot of what we call talking heads in improv, where we're just talking about doing something instead of actually doing the thing, the randomness could be injected to then either spur the players onward to then take action, regardless of what that action is, or to have action thrusted upon them where they are forced to react in a certain way. That avoids the talking head scenario where it's just talking for 45 minutes.
Momentum time, roll the d6s. I like that. Okay, speaking of rolling, that's a minus.
That's campaign moments.
All right, this is from Isaac Martinez. Says, what are your favorite story arcs?
Ooh, yeah, I think...
Ooh.
Could I throw mine out there first?
Go
Mine
for it.
actually is a simple one, or not simple sounds like a negative, but it was not like a drawn-out thing. One of my favorite was actually Fleeple's, when Fleeple had to find out what is a worshiper of Bahamut. Like, because at the beginning, he was like, immolation! Like, he's just burning everybody up. And everybody who's for Tiamat or against Bahamut or not with Bahamut all the way, they're just bye-bye. And having a little bit of that crisis of, not a crisis of faith, but a how do I move forward with my faith? I love that idea that even with Fleeple being a simple character where he doesn't have necessarily the complications that Mal or Lance had, it still was, there are moments where he can change and grow too. So I really like that.
And I did appreciate that helped kind of, from the beginning, set the stakes for the entire, Cult of the Dragon. How do we feel about them? That was pretty nice. Mine, if you want to hear us talk about it more in depth, go listen to our last Commune with Dungeon Master episode that we released.
I was just going to say that was one of mine too.
Yeah, because Thomas and I asked him, could you kind of talk us through the process of, again, the encounter below Candlekeep with the creepy death hallway and the giant room and the Demonomicon. I loved seeing Thomas just kind of very straight up say, all right, this is a place that is for my characters. It doesn't necessarily have, we're going to connect it to the broader story, but this is their dungeon. And I really loved having all those individualized little encounters.
My favorite arc, it's hard because I don't know that it felt like an arc, but mechanic moments were when we ran into the Githyanki, because that was something that I had set up with Thomas in advance without any knowledge of how that was going to come about. I liked the idea of there was this impending danger that the Jhank squad had no idea was coming for them. And then eventually it did, and then it was kind of this overhanging thing until Mal eventually got rid of the sword, and I had left all of that up to Thomas, including if Mal was going to give up the sword or if she was going to find a way to keep it. And I don't know what that would have been, but finding some way to keep it. And so it was cool for me as a player to give the full thing over to Thomas as the DM, and then to see the way that he implemented it. And I was really happy with the way that whole thing turned out.
I will say, on me and Ned's side, I distinctly remember, and I don't know if Ned remembers this, but when you killed the Githyanki in Candlekeep, it was almost like me and Ned looked at each other. You were describing it like, oh no, she did that. We're like, how? We were like, okay, how do we back that up?
We're accessories to mail fraud right now. What do we do?
Mail fraud.
Yeah, it was definitely like okay, we're doing this. So that was fun.
Yep.
There were a lot of great moments, but the underground library was definitely one of them. There was a couple of moments with Malamar that I thought were amazing based off of what Mickey was deciding to do with Mal that surprised me. But I think one of my favorites was the Stonky adventure. For Stonky, which is probably Jacob's favorite portion.
I did not like those. I did not like that adventure, but at the same time, I did, but I didn't. It was like a frustration, but I also enjoyed playing it.
I liked how it was like, there are stakes here that have nothing to do with
that was
anything
cool.
we've done up to this point. And it was a nice palate cleanser with all of the heaviness that we had gone over. And just to be goofy, dumb D&D. Dumb in the best sense of the word, right? Of just let's just play D&D, man. That was so fun.
All right, next up, that's another minus.
That's another
campaign moment. All right, this is from, this is a long one. This is from Zach W. Zach W says, the Nat 20 on Arithator. First, I could picture emotions running high at that moment. How did everyone feel at that moment, Thomas included? Second, as players of D&D, have you been able to table and see someone roll higher damage than that in one strike.
No.
I don't think
No.
so.
How much
That was
damage
so
was
much
it total?
damage. It was like
It was 100 and
160 something,
It
wasn't
was
it?
something.
It was over 100.
It was over
I don't
100.
think
60 might be too high. It was a lot of damage.
I don't remember every damage roll that I've ever experienced, but I've run level 20 encounters against ancient red dragons, and I don't think any of those attacks got higher than this one.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good because it was sneak attack and an arrow of dragon slaying and double damage. So lots coming at you. And I'll say for answering the first part of this question, how did everyone feel? I felt satisfied.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I screwed up
Vindication
that
for
battle
Lance- for
so
Jacob.
much at the beginning, the first battle with that guy, and I was like, oh, it's all better.
Yeah, if I have any suspicions or superstitions around dice, it's that dice aren't actually just impartial. They care about the story and they want
I
the story to be
agree.
good.
I agree.
Yeah, that was a very satisfying moment. I think I've talked about it before, but being Arth, the Tor Coming was not meant to be a long battle. It was meant to be like an encounter that would encourage them into the lava tubes and maybe do like a little bit of damage. So to see like that natural 20, my face just like drop in excitement of like, what does this mean? And it was so exciting that one of my players got to have such an epic moment. It felt earned, even though dice is random, right? Like it felt like it was the right moment for that.
All right, next up. That's a plus. It's Mickey's time.
The first question's for me, too. What software do I use to edit the podcast? Isaac Martinez asked. I use Audacity. It is a free program. It is a program that I learned in college. My professor, Antonia Clifford, shout out, we used to use it for our sound class.
Since she's definitely listening to
She's
this.
definitely. I
She
actually
is.
sent her several of the first episodes before we released them because I was like, Antonia, I really need you to like listen to this and make sure that it sounds really good. It's called Audacity. It'll sure won't ever. We've never had any kind of problems with it. I've had this program since I took that class in 14, and I've never had the problems that some other people who shall remain nameless have been having. So I use that for everything. I use it for my recording. I use it for editing all of our stuff together. I use it for our sound effects. I really love it, and I love all the things that you can do on it as a free program. Are there better programs out there for pay? Probably. Do I pay for it? No.
All right.
Audacity.
Next question. Another plus.
Ha! This one's not for me. How do you guys feel about the closure of Campaign 1 emotionally? Zach W. asks.
Amazing, cathartically wonderful.
I think the only thing that wasn't possibly like fulfilling, but then it did, was beating the boss and being like, that's it? Where's Tiamat? Where's
the
where's
final
all the
battle.
things? But then realizing, oh crap, we have this portal to close, and then that led to one of the best emotionally fulfilling moments. So
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, it always takes me a while to catch up emotionally with the end of things. I don't think I still quite have yet. We'll see if it ends up happening. But I'm just too dang excited about Campaign 2 to feel sad about this right now.
This is the first campaign I've ever closed fully. So it was very satisfying and very fulfilling
me
to go all the way
too.
through the end. Played a lot of campaigns. First one all the way through.
All right, so feeling good overall. Another plus.
Mickey, there you go.
Now that the adventure is over, has any of the cast gone and read the book to see how things were laid out or things that they had missed? Source 4 asks.
I think I can answer and say no. I doubt anybody has.
I've started.
I was going to say
Ned
Ned.
has.
I would be
Okay.
surprised if Ned
There you go.
hasn't.
Yeah, I specifically was like, okay, I'm not going to read any more of this book than I already have because I don't want to spoil anything. And now is my chance to actually go in there and I kind of mentioned this in Commune with DM. I want to see the ways in which Thomas made this adventure better than what they had in the book.
Well, and there's a lot to the adventure that we didn't do in this campaign. So half of the adventure, you'll be like, oh, there's a lot that
we
you
also
could
killed one of the
discover that's
major
brand
bad
new.
guys. Like
That's very
halfway
true.
through.
Yes.
Off the top of your head, Thomas, was there anything that either we sidetracked or something that you regretted taking out, or like for time that you're just like, if I could go back and do it again, I would do this part. Off the top of your head?
Yeah, there was a cloud giant castle.
That's the thing I want to see. Because I know
Maybe
it's
that's Storm's King Thunder.
No, this is a different one, and it would have been very fun. But I took it out because of time, and it didn't make sense narratively. It was really fun though. There was a dragon that lived in it, which was already an interesting dichotomy. Anyway,
was there a path that we could have gone down to get there? Like for instance, we had our choice of like, you can go help the druids, or you can go north and get Earthator.
If you went up to the caravan to spice things up, I probably would have jumped to the Cloud Giant Castle very quickly, because that's how actually where a hoard of dragon gold that was being stolen from Greenest, it was eventually ending up in this castle and then being taken to the Well of Dragons.
Very nice. Next question. Another minus.
All right. Campaign moments. This is from Michael Sear. Michael Sear says, while I was waiting for the drop, I realized that epilogues terrify me. Any tips on epilogues for DMs and players?
Yeah, the epilogue terrified me as well, because it's kind of like if you don't have a good bookend to something, it leaves people feeling unsatisfied. So yeah, there's a lot of fear going into that for sure.
I would say a tip. This is just my own personal take on epilogues and kind of finishing things out. You want to wrap things up, but also leave, I don't know how to put this, satisfying questions, so that it can keep the adventure going,
keeps it alive
in the listeners or the viewers or whatever it is mind. Yeah. That's why, like, for instance, in creating the gravestones, I wanted to leave little things for people to be like, oh, there's more. What is that like? And that might not be something we ever answer, but it's always there's more story that a person can create on their own.
Next roll.
All right. It's a blank. So, Thomas.
It's a me.
We've answered a little bit of this in our Campaign 2 announcement, but I think there's maybe a little bit more depth we can go into from Isaac Martinez. Two different questions that dovetail with each other. One, what will the next season be about? Will you be running a published campaign or creating a homebrew story? And also, will you use more homebrew in the next season, since it's now going to be in the world of Pathfinder?
Yes. So we have talked about this, but we are going to be using a published adventure. I say that with quotes, though, because like Tyranny of Dragons, there's like a lot of stuff, or half of it, that I'm like, this is really good stuff to pull from mechanically, map-wise, and just like narratively, it's really good stuff. But there is a lot of stuff where I was like, that doesn't seem too interesting. Like, that doesn't seem like so satisfying, the type of campaign we want to run. So yes, we will be using the template of a published adventure to really flesh out the beginnings of Season 2. But then as we move into Season 2 and we really start to see what our players and our extra cast member, who is still secret at this point, is going to be adding to the story, and what we all are deciding and discovering is satisfying, then I will start morphing the story to fit that. I have some really good ideas about like what I want the end campaign to be like, though, just from some of like the geographical locations of Galarian, and things like that, and just some of the stuff written in the book as well. So yeah, but there will be a lot more homebrew, specifically because it's Pathfinder. So almost everything mechanically that I do will have to be homebrew, since it's being ported into 5e. But but I'm going to be using Pathfinder as a template there.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Have we announced which published adventure we're going to be basing it off of?
I took a picture and posted it on Patreon.
Oh,
at
are
our
you saying that if people join our
specifically.
Patreon, they can get exclusive behind-the-scenes snippets about what we're going to be doing?
Yes. If you go join our Discord, I'll be continuing to tease more about Season 2 on there before we drop it the first Wednesday of May.
Well, it sounds like it's time for the next question, then. Another blank. Okay,
right.
So I initially put this on the list as a question from me, but we also had a couple of our listeners ask the same question. Did you have any other plans for Ruzdesk the Banished, the Mind Flayer?
Priest Desk.
Yeah.
I forgot
so
about him.
I did. Some of these questions have been answered in Commune with Dungeon Master, so I won't go into depth. But Ruse Desk the Banished was a really fun NPC that I kind of pulled out of my hat. You can see there's a lot of similarities between him and the Mind Flayer from Campaign 1 of Critical Role, because it was pulled out of my hat, and I needed like a really strong template to pull from. But I think there was a moment where something popped in my mind. I was like, the players need a guide. They might need something to help motivate them or pull them along so we don't get too lost in this area. And that's where Ruse Dex the Banished. He was actually a random encounter, which you guys came across, and then he was pulled into the story at that point. I didn't have any major plans for him unless the players wanted to pull him in. He kind of was just like a thread that I pulled in, and he then disappeared. One of those things of like life. In life, you have a lot of like things come at you that are never resolved or never seen again in your life for as long as you live. And that was just kind of like one of those moments where I was like, you know what? This is just a moment they encounter. He disappears. He got what he wanted. He did get what he wanted, by the way.
Oh, great.
Thank to your guys' help.
Yeah, I feel great about that.
But if the players wanted to pursue that, then obviously he would have come into play. I would have come up with a lot more like clues and like teases about like where exactly he would have been, etc.
Very nice. Next question. Another blank. This is also from me. Thomas, why was the dragon mask not in the chest?
Yeah, so I homebrew quite a bit of stuff, but this was written in the adventure. That the moment Resmir was killed, the mask would immediately teleport to the Well of Dragons.
Oh, interesting.
I thought maybe it just never was there to begin with.
So there's obviously some good adventuring. Maybe good's not a good word for it, but there's obviously a reason why. If you need all 5 dragon masks to complete the ritual, and you have to like walk your players along to the final battle. If they can get a dragon mask and destroy it beforehand, then there is no final battle. So from a adventure standpoint, these are what some of these older adventures seem a little railroady, right? Because they remove some of this agency from the players, which is why I try to inject some choice in there and being like, okay, well, they can still find the treasure chest. Instead of the treasure chest just not being possible for them to find, they can find it. They can take it. If they don't kill Resmir, then that's the solution. But it really was kind of what you were saying, Ned, of like that spell of like when somebody dies, the item is returned to a predetermined place.
The contingency there.
Exactly. It was a contingency for the greater good. Since they were a worm speaker, they're not entirely selfish. They did want it to go back. And that's the justification I used of why the adventure had it written that the mask would return to the Well of Dragons at that point.
I feel bad for blaming Josh now.
Well,
we can still blame him.
When I recently re-listened to it, I kind of got the idea because Josh felt the direction that it was in, and then it disappeared. And then we went into the room. He used detect magic on the box. And as I listened to it, I was like, we just kind of assumed it was in the box. We never clarified that it was in the box. And so I was like, maybe it just wasn't there to begin with. Maybe somebody teleported out with it and we just assumed it was in the box.
Well, I know that detect magic says it can't detect magic past lead, I think.
Right.
So that was my idea. Is like
it was locked in a lead
detect
box.
magic. And I was like, well, I'm not going to just say you don't sense it because that's dumb, even though technically the mask probably would be in the lead box. That's why I was like, I'm going to say you feel it, but then it disappears to kind of like give you the choice as players to still pursue that thread if you wanted to, right?
Devious.
It was led very well in a way that even without knowing that, it still felt like maybe we just assumed.
That was one of the most surprising moments of the campaign is how long you went without
Checking
opening the treasure chest after the fact. I was like, here we are, 10 episodes later, we're finally checking the treasure chest here. About time.
What's in the box?
Oh, gosh. Regrets.
Boy.
Anyway, next question. This is A-.
Campaign moments. All right. Our next question is from Zach W. It says, were there any regrets, whether from gameplay or role-playing angles, of doing the 1-year jump?
I had a few regrets as the dungeon master. it basically boiled down to the idea of like, how do you accurately represent a year jump with skill and active adventuring on your own outside of just normal skill checks? And I couldn't really find a satisfying answer. So everybody did like a series of skill checks to kind of represent that time, but I wish I had studied a little bit more into other systems about like what could be done here that's not just the luck of the dice.
No, I was glad that we had that opportunity because there were moments in this campaign that I got tired of playing Fleeple. I felt like I'd explored kind of all of the avenues for his character growth, and this was just a little thing that gave me a chance to reinvigorate him in just some little ways to keep it through the rest of the campaign.
How have a significant portion of time passed, therefore what would have occurred mentally or emotionally in character instead of just, well, this is my everyday for the past month. It's like, no, time has passed and tragedy possibly has occurred, like when all those people died in the second dragon attack, and you're like, well, I'm bringing a crap ton of diamonds, and this is now, and I've never had to that's a good point.
So I thought it was great. I don't know what you're talking about, Thomas.
I was fine with it. Yeah. I think it played out well.
Cool. Roll the dice.
Roll in. That's another minus.
Campaign moments. All right, next up, this is from Scott Owens. What was the biggest secret you couldn't wait to reveal? I didn't have too many secrets.
Yeah, not at all.
Oh my gosh. Get out. Get out.
Get off Discord right now.
The biggest secret to reveal.
Was it the scar on your neck?
The scar,
Probably.
yeah, that's right. The scars were pretty... Yeah, I would say that. I would say just the... I mean, there's not like one pegged moment. I loved the slow unfolding of Lance Thalen's backstory. And I know it might be very melodramatic, but I felt like there were so good key moments to add a little bit more, or to, reveal a little bit more, I should say. So those were pretty satisfying. The neck scars are pretty satisfying. And that the first one to find out was not a member of the party, but was Josh.
Yeah, it was Ralph, who almost killed.
Yeah, those were just very satisfying to keep going with it and to find those moments where a reveal didn't happen just for shock, but it was a moment to somehow grow. And I really liked that Thomas was able to provide that.
I really liked, I said it a little earlier, the Githyanki, because I knew that Ned would be really excited about the Githyanki.
Ned was stoked about the Githyanki.
I knew that Ned would be really excited about it. And I didn't know if Jake would know what a Githyanki was
I know what a
Githyanki is. Well, but like off of the description and like how their lore, they're very lore heavy, and I assumed that Ned knew the lore and that Jake wasn't necessarily up on the lore because I had to read about the lore. I didn't just know it. So
I don't know much, but I know an intro to Githyanki, if you will.
Yeah. And so I was really excited about that specifically for Ned to get to. Mm-hmm. And then as a player, the fact that Heir 2 destroyed the village and not the half-orcs for Mal, because Thomas changed what I had originally written about it. And so as a player, I was excited because I felt like I was reacting to it much more honestly, because it wasn't what I had already envisioned for it. So to have that being reacting, it was something that I enjoyed as a player.
For me, where Fleeple didn't have a lot of like story secrets, he was really kind of an open book. I think for me, the most fun I had revealing secrets was revealing to Thomas that I had learned a certain spell and pulling it out off the cuff, like polymorphing the beholder when we were in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Classic
secrets from the DM
shenanigans.
Yeah. Or what was another good one? I'm trying to remember. There were a couple.
The whale chasing after
the whale.
Yes!
That was a good one.
That was a good plots against the DM.
Oh yeah, pulling out scrying on...
Yes, that was so clutch.
Yes, and you're like, I have this thing. And I was like,
okay.
Oh crap, didn't mean to provide that thing for them.
Yeah.
But it provided a really nice narrative, like spy espionage element that we hadn't had up to that point, really.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about these spellcasters who can have a lot of different tools in their tool chest. It makes me think back to in Sneak Attack, there's the scene where Sherwood, the druid, reveals that he has meld with stone. And Reed is like, what the heck are you doing? And I just love those little moments.
Yeah, or speak with plants. I love that.
Okay. Oh, Thomas, your favorite secrets that you wanted to reveal?
A lot. I mean, there was a lot of them. There was just a lot of good. I really liked revealing the homebrew dragon tooth from Mondath. I think that would be one of my favorites of like this Japanese RPG transformation where everyone was like, "What the crap is going on?
What's happening?"
Yeah, very Final Fantasy inspired there.
Yes, it's almost like I grew up with Final Fantasy.
You don't say. All right, what do we got next? Another blank. This comes
my
from...
last one? Nope, it's not my last one.
You have so many more questions.
I have so many.
This one is also from Zach W. Thomas, I vaguely remember that you said you rarely get to play a PC. Have you considered joining the PCs as a sidekick character? I've seen they are simpler characters to play and might not be as crazy for you. This referring, I think, to... It was first added to the Essentials box and then later added to Tasha's Cauldron, I think?
I think it was Tasha's, yeah.
A very simplified, streamlined way of playing a sidekick character is what they're called. You don't have to do as much like futzing around with your character choices. It's just like you want to play a warrior, boom, here you go.
Yeah, and this is to give like optional rules for just two people, like one DM and one player, actually, to where the player just doesn't get annihilated by these high level encounters, right? They can still fight a dragon. No, I haven't considered that. Not that I don't want to play with my players here, but there's a couple reasons why I won't do that, at least to begin with. One, I don't ever want to feel like I'm pushing my story. That was kind of the journey of campaign 1 for me as a dungeon master, being like, it's more satisfying to not push what I think is a fun story. It's fun to assist what the players think is a fun story to tell. And sometimes playing NPC or a sidekick might lean into that a little too much if I'm like, we should really go check out this door over here. It's glowing, you know? Mm-hmm. But then also there are so many mechanics I'm trying to keep straight in my brain, especially during combat. And I'm already horrible at tactics through battle. I'm sure there have been people in battles who be like, Thomas, why didn't you just use this element of the dragon or of this? Why did you forget that? And I really want to get better at running tactical battles in D&D before I add more mechanics onto myself. So yeah, probably not.
Yeah, and I will say no more than this right now, but we have other plans to get Thomas on the other side of the screen.
A third podcast.
Okay, another blank. This comes from Matthias Thalion. What happened to Leosin? Did he become the head of the Harpers eventually?
That's a great question. In my mind, I hadn't written it out, but in my headcanon, Leosin did not become a part of the Harpers. He's kind of like one of those... Leosin, in my mind, is kind of one of those people devoted to the cause. I kind of like think of... I just rewatched the Christopher Nolan Batman series. And I think of like Commissioner Gordon in like The Dark Knight Rises, where everyone's like kind of relaxed after 8 to 10 years of like no crime. And Commissioner Gordon's like highly vigilant regardless. Even though he's like the leader, like he would have been highly vigilant in any position outside of like a commissioner, right? Like if he was a captain, if he was like a beat cop, he would have been highly vigilant just because of who he was. Kind of feel like that's Leosin, to where he's going to be highly vigilant to make sure that this cult is destroyed if at all possible, since that's what he's devoted his life to, but also helping and finding other upcoming threats of like liches and things like that. But maybe not as politically savvy, even though he did show some savvy in the Waterdeep councils, not as politically savvy as some of the higher elves or some of the older generation or people that live a lot longer than humans.
So he is now a bit of a free agent, a freelancer, as it were.
Yeah, so he's kind of like got enough standing to where he can choose whatever he pursues in the Harpers, and he has a lot of weight because he's the one that like really pushed this, so he could get like any assistance he would ever need in the Harpers, and he can choose whatever threat he wants to investigate.
Yeah, Ronin, that's the term I was looking for. He's a Ronin.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, next question. Minus.
Campaign moments. All right. This is actually the last campaign moment question. It is from Scott Owens, and it says, what part was the most fun to record?
Josh.
I think I can answer this. The fight out the window was the best.
Yes.
Like, was just the most craziest,
We're big Josh Lorimer fans over here.
I don't think we ever laughed as much, and probably Mickey had to edit so much laughter out of that, even though so much
fun,
was
though.
still there. It was just so like, what? I don't know if we've ever said this, but originally Josh was supposed to be like a 2-episode thing. Like he was not supposed to be there long, and we like extended it. Like when we started fighting, that was like the final episode for Josh, and I think we kept bringing him back for like
Yeah,
2 to
2 to
3
7
more
episodes.
Same time next week, and he goes,
Yeah.
sure.
He's
Yeah.
like, I'm back for that. And so that was so fun.
Well,
Yeah.
and our other guest campaign, Caleb Anderton and Heather Brower are friends of ours. We've played with them before. We've been in shows with them. We've done improv with them together. And so our dynamic, while different with them, was very different than Joshua Lorimer because none of us had ever met him before. I think he brought a really chaotic and fun dynamic that none of us knew how to,
Yeah, I loved so much that Ralph and Fleeple had this surprising connection in just being little chaos goblins for a moment there.
Well, that's the thing. Like,
Yeah, at the
Fleeple
gambling
is
hall.
so like, I'm going to throw a curveball here. That's it. Like curveballs. It's like an automated machine of curveballs with Josh. It's just,
Yeah.
it's rapid fire.
I'll say the one, since none of you got to experience it, but doing I think it was like episode 30 and a half or something like that, where it was just me, Caleb, and Heather. That was a lot of fun because we were literally creating Wisteria Vale together. Like I was like, okay, I've got some preconceived notions, but like, what do you guys think Wisteria Vale should be? And they're like, I think it should be this. I think we should do this. I think we should do that. So that was like pure creation recorded into an episode. So that was a lot of fun for me. And I get to record my beautiful wife, of course.
Nice. Now, next question. Minus. Jacob, let's swap you over to character-specific questions.
All right. Was there something we were rolling for that, or were we just getting to it later?
Yeah, we're just getting to that later.
All right. Well, here we are. Character questions. All right. Back to, this is from Zach W. Zach W. asking a lot of questions. Back with the 1-year time skip, Fleeple was hunting dragons during that time with the Order of the Gauntlet. Everyone knows that dragons have treasure hoards. So, if he was part of the hunting party, did Fleeple ever take a share of the hoards from the 3 dragons that were killed?
3 dragons. I killed 50 dragons during that
I was
year. let
imagining
me
those
tell
like
you.
wormlings, right? Like they weren't like full
Hey,
dragons.
they're
with
all
hordes.
dragons. They count. I don't know. Honestly, I
Dragon's a dragon, no matter how small.
did not even think of it. I was just like, yeah, role play, storytelling, character development for Fleeple. I'm tired of this character. Now I get to inject new life into him. And I just was not at all thinking about, man, I could be getting a lot of loot out of this. It literally never crossed my mind.
I think it crossed my mind once, but then I was like, well,
Nah.
they're gonna try and take like the gold. I mean, these are good, like lawful, like paladins that he's with. They're like, let's take this gold and give back to the people and to the societies and stuff. And like, sure, like maybe Fleeple got like a helper's like freelance fee, but with his like direct like involvement and agreement in the Order of the Gauntlet, it kind of was like a wibbly wobbly, like, do you want the gold? Because we won't give it to you if you don't want it, type of a thing. So.
But man, I'm just thinking of how much money I spent on those diamonds to bring those guys back from the dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they reimbursed you. Maybe that's what
Yeah.
happened, but it didn't cross my mind until like a fleeting moment, really.
Yeah, no regrets. Next up, another minus.
All right. Character questions. This is from Sin Twist. Sin Twist is asking, is there a reason Jacob did not get a token for Vandal? What is the limit of tokens he can have? So the second part of that question, the limit, it is actually written into the character or to the mechanics of it. You can have as much as your proficiency bonus, which I don't think I ever maxed out. So I could have. I think there was even, to peek behind the curtain a little bit, there was even part of me that was like, I'm gonna do something with that token, but it never was brought up. It was more of, it was honestly like it was a very cool thing because with after the battle, with how much like Malamara and Lance Thalen were able to have like a moment, it was like, I don't need another moment. Forget that. And so it almost became part of the story of, this is a token that Lance either couldn't, didn't, or just didn't care to receive.
It was really cool, like to him to let go.
Yeah.
Of,
Truly
like,
letting go of
Vandal.
him.
Being like, No, this is done. I'm completely, you're out of my life.
Yeah.
Like, you don't deserve me to relish in this.
A little bit more behind the scenes, though. What I did with, oh my gosh, who's the big bad?
Severin?
Everybody? Severin. What I did with Severin's token was somewhat of the idea of
So
what I was going to be doing with Vandal's token. But again,
Yeah.
it just felt like this is perfectly wrapped up. I don't need to do that. But then it was cool to have like a little moment of like, I can't do it just with somebody else. So yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Nice. All right, next up, blank. This comes from Ernagana999. So this goes into the epilogue episode. Was any of that introduction written in the campaign, or did one of the cast members write it?
The introduction to the epilogue, one of the cast members did write it. That was me. I wrote
job.
it, and I wrote it actually to mirror or almost use the exact wording of our first episode of season 1. So I went back and I re-listened to season 1. And I was like, okay, what do I say? And so like, where they're in the first episode is like where the elements of evil are starting to plot and rise up. I think I used wording where it's like where the elements of evil or where the elements of good have stamped out evil at this point to kind of like bookend
Yeah.
where Faerun was at that given point in time. So yeah, I wrote it.
Yeah, I think we have one particular patron who's going to be very happy to hear about that little chiasm that you're adding in there.
Yeah.
All right, next, plus, back to Mickey.
Zach, are you three going to continue to bully Thomas?
Yeah.
Yes.
Shut.
Yeah.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Next
So I'm going to
question.
ask the Ned one. Ned, Jacob, Mickey, do either of the three of you have character building decisions you wish you would have done differently? Like, for example, picking a feat that rarely came up, if ever. Also from Zach.
So, for me, the big one is taking that one level dip into Cleric. Thematically, it made sense. Mechanically, I'm torn on it because
Interesting.
there are pluses and minuses to it. For one, like, I did get that whole Peace Domain Cleric, you can heal a whole bunch of people at once, but by the time I got to higher levels, the amount of healing we were getting from that ability wasn't worth me spending my action on that instead of casting spells.
Sure.
But the benefit that came from that was I could, on the cleric side of things, I could always have Healing Word prepared, I could always have Bless prepared, I could have all of the cleric-y spells prepared because I was a cleric, and that left me room to open up my druid memorization slots for different, more utility-based spells. So I'm torn on it. It was probably suboptimal, but it had benefits.
That makes sense.
Yeah, a Warlock Barbarian was a suboptimal combination.
It was, but it
But
turned out really cool.
I liked it a lot. I think I don't remember if I took a feat or if I just I kind of used my charisma as a dump stat, which seems like a mistake as a cleric as a warlock.
As a warlock?
That I feel like I especially as the Githyanki sword increased in power, that I didn't need my strength as much, as it would have been more fun to have my spell DC be higher and therefore able to cast some spells that I never did because they had a lower DC on it. And so as a spellcaster with a fighter, I wish that I had put more effort into the spellcaster side so that when I did do spellcasting, it was beneficial. And then the melee stuff just came by itself.
It wasn't until after you switched from Fiend to Celestial that you decided you wanted to invest more in Warlock, wasn't it?
Yes, but that was because of talking to Thomas and going, okay, what level are we finishing? And weighing the benefits of what I got at higher levels of Barbarian and what I got as higher levels of Warlock. It just didn't, it didn't do a whole lot. So I took a couple extra in Warlock and like another one in Barbarian just because getting to level, it wasn't, you guys ended at 15 or, Fleeple at 14. And so with already 3 in Warlock, I was like, well, I'm already at a 12 and this doesn't do a whole lot for me. And so trying to balance between the two, what got me the most bang for the buck for the next 3 levels that we were going to get for the final battle.
For me, it kind of fits with what Ned was saying. Thematically, it worked perfect. Practically, Crunch Squatty, it was just like, yeah, this didn't work. And that was literally my roguish archetype,
Oh,
the
really?
Phantom, because it worked perfectly thematically, because it's like, oh, the souls are
Right.
haunting you, da, 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 da.
Yeah.
But I rarely used the features of it. The most I used was the thing you get right away, which is you can change your proficiency after a short or long rest. I use that all the time. But the shadow dagger knight, I call them shadow daggers. They're actually called wails from the grave. I was never within 30 feet of someone else. Like, because I would play distance, or I would be so close to another enemy that Thomas didn't use too often pack tactics against us. So there weren't surrounding enemies too much to attack. The ghost walk I used once in the tunnel, which was really cool, but
Clutch, though.
again, never really, it was clutch. Again, that's why like I'm not like too like, oh, this was terrible. It was great elements. It wasn't though like, oh, you could use these all the time. Same thing with the tokens. The tokens do some really cool things. We almost never use them because tokens, again, it says you could have advantages on death saving throws. I actually never had to do death saving throws once I got that ability. So it's like, oh, okay. When you deal sneak attack damage, you destroy a soul token and you can do a wail from the grave, a shadow dagger. Again, I never was really that close to be able to do that. You can destroy and ask one question. Everyone we killed, we never had questions for. So it was very much like all these little cool features I never really actually got to tap into just with how it all played out.
But thematically,
I wouldn't change it because thematically it worked so well to add layer and texture to the story. But it was definitely from a satisfying like, oh, look at all these things I can do. It was oh yeah, I can't really do any of these things.
Well, we live and learn.
Yep.
Next up, another minus.
Character moments. Or character questions, whatever I said. Okay, here we go. This is from Isaac Martinez again. Did Vandal himself kill Lance, or was it just a minion?
tell us.
You don't get to know that. No, I'm joking. So to be very explicit on the backstory, this is the moment to do it. Lance was a bookkeeper. He was using his intelligence for Vandal, and he found that Vandal was stealing stuff, which I have said, but just to be very clear with it. He brought that to Vandal because he didn't think Vandal was doing it. He thought someone was doing it to him, realizing now that Vandal was actually stealing from the Zentarum. So Vandal had to eliminate the person who knew he was stealing from the Zentarum. That was Lance, and that was his sister. Vandal's the one that does it. That's actually why this was, again, just random little things that I would never bring up. That's actually why whenever we talked about Lance drinking, he always drank the cheapest wine, because Vandal offered him a very expensive wine that poisoned him, and then he cut his throat. That was part of the backstory of it, which didn't need to be revealed, but that was kind of one of the reasons why he did that. And yeah, he killed them. He had someone ditch them in a ditch leave their bodies in a ditch outside of Neverwinter. That's where Lance woke up miraculously from this, what would be a killer wound, and finding his sister dead right there.
Was there any magical or other reason besides just miracle that he happened to not cut as deep or anything? Did you have anything in like that in your backstory? Why Lance survived?
Not
or
really.
Just
it was.
just
I kind of
happened
left
to?
that for Thomas. If Thomas wanted to incorporate something or not, to me, in a practical standpoint, and just okay, how did this happen? Lance succeeded on death saving throws and stabilized himself and lay there while his sister didn't, and his sister passed away. And so somehow miraculously, as we all know, like, oh, the dragon hits you with 40 points, and you're like, I only had 1 health point left. That would probably look pretty grievous of an injury to get hit that hard when you're almost dead. And that's what I took from creating that moment is Lance just got hit really hard with a very killer blow, and somehow he was able to survive with death saving throws and pulling out of it, as miracles happen sometimes.
Dang, that I was not expecting to hear that Lance didn't actually die, but there you go.
There was. He was, again, he has his throat cut and he was close, but he succeeded.
Death saving throws.
Death saving throws.
Natural 20.
Nat 20, baby.
Yep.
Come back up with 1 hit point. Next, we got a plus.
This next question is from Sin Twist. It has 2 parts to the question. The first part is for me, and it's a short answer, and then I'll ask the second half. So the first one, Sin Twist said, I know that Jacob and Ned both had a bard as a backup character, which we've referred to several times. But did Mickey have one? And was the clock roach incident or the bloody bowl the closest you came to using your backup? I did have a backup. And you may or maybe not see a reskin of my backup character for season 2. I decided that the character that I was creating as a backup, I really wanted to actually play. So I'm glad I didn't have to play her in campaign 1 because I'm going to play her in campaign 2. And I was so upset that the clock roach almost killed me. I know that Mal went down a couple of times, but that was the one that was like actually the scariest because of the stunning and that was a pack tactic one that they were just all over the place, and so going down multiple enemies in a bad place. The clock roach was for sure the scariest. I wasn't as scared in the bloody bowl. But the
stun is by far the OP mechanic to just screw people over, and I need to remember that.
That was scary, but it had real consequences, which does make it fun. So the second half of the question is: since nobody had to use their backup character, how would you have incorporated them into the story, Thomas?
I don't know.
Depending on how the first one died.
It would have depended on, any number of factors, right? Where did they die? How did they die? Who killed them? At what point of the adventure were they in? What type of a character were they? What type of class were they? There would be too many factors to really pre-plan for anything like that, in my opinion. So, yeah, I don't know.
We'll cross that bridge if we come to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Campaign 2.
All right. Next up, another plus.
Just Evening asked, did anyone's alignment change throughout the campaign?
Yes. Fleeple started out true neutral, mostly just because of this. He was in this nebulous place where he didn't really know what his belief system meant at that point. It was very new to him. So he had some things that were pulling him towards chaos, some things towards law, some things towards good, something towards evil, and that all kind of left him in the middle. But by the end, I would say he was neutral good by the end of the campaign.
I don't know if it changed. There's more inclination. Lance was actually true neutral as well, because he was willing to totally screw over anybody if it meant succeeding something. It was just, I'm loyal to myself and then to the party afterward. But I think he kind of became a little bit more chaotic good, especially as he realized doing the things he would normally do could cost his party their own kind of sense of morality. And so he kind of like would begrudgingly adapt his morality to them. But there were also moments, I think, when I was on my own, like with Josh's character, where I was on the fence about killing Josh's character. Like, it wasn't like I'm not really going to do it. I honestly was like, I might just do this because I'm on my own. They're not here. And this is what Lance would do. But because of how some of the conversation played out, it worked out in his favor.
Lucky Josh.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously. I feel like Malamara's personality alignment definitely changed. I don't know what it was to change to, especially because I feel like I had loftier goals coming into the campaign of what I want, where I wanted her to be, and then looking back going, I didn't play that the way that I wanted that to. I didn't play up elements that I wish I had. That I loved the arc and the growth that she had, which makes me go back and wish that I had started lower or started at a different place so that rise could have been greater and more apparent. And that's just like, as a performer, that I want to take into season 2 to be like, really, where is this character starting from? Where do I want to see them go? And how is that change? Not necessarily even where they're going to go. Because Ned, you talked about this, that a lot of the campaign you didn't have where Fleeple was going to go per se, but the journey was the important part. Mm-hmm. That I, as a performer, want the character to be compelling, and that the growth in whatever direction is apparent and satisfying. And so for me, Mal definitely changed episode 1 to an episode 111, but I don't know that it falls on the alignment chart nicely, because probably true neutral to neutral good, especially with switching out the Fiend Warlock patron for a Celestial Warlock patron. But I don't know that I really played episode 1 Mal as true neutral. And I don't know that 111 Mal was really, neutral good.
I'm just now realizing that we all started out true neutral.
Yeah.
I know, and that's why I'm like, I feel like
Except
I should
for me,
have worked
which
on
was
it
true
more.
chaos.
True chaos.
I definitely was not a chaos
Pure
player.
chaos.
I was chaotic all the way around. Next question.
Next question. Minus.
Character questions. Here we go. We have... This is from Isaac Martinez. Why is Fleeple a druid when he acts so much like a cleric?
Yeah. So
Let's talk about it.
The simple part of the answer is because I wanted to play a druid. So the character development happens in various orders. You might start with a concept, you might start with a race, you might start with a class. I already knew that I was going to be playing a kobold druid, a character that I had previously played very briefly for a campaign that Thomas ran that was dragon themed. And I decided to bring that character back, and when I was fleshing out his personality and his background, I was thinking to myself, what would be interesting for this story? I'm playing a kobold in a campaign where we're trying to stop the person who is the god of the kobolds. How does that manifest? And religion ended up being an interesting way to play around with those themes.
I really liked it as well. Sorry to interrupt. I really liked it as well because religion obviously is just heavily laden on clerics and paladins. And I really liked how it was like, no, religion is something that everybody can explore still, regardless of your class or affiliation with anybody. So I really liked how it wasn't just the cleric, but it was funny how we all just assumed you were a cleric the entire campaign.
Yeah, it's very easy to get precious about kind of the trope protection in D&D. I think there's maybe some danger to that. Like, I've played in campaigns with new players who are like, oh, I'm playing the rogue. That means it's my job to steal stuff from the other party members when they're not paying attention, right?
Right.
No, maybe not. Maybe, play around with the character. Don't fall into the tropes. Don't play the bard who just wants to seduce absolutely anybody and everybody.
Unless that's the kind of bard you want to play. I think that there's,
I suppose,
going against the trope is fun stuff, but also there are tropes for a reason.
Well, there are ways to lean into the tropes without, if it lends well to the party.
Yes,
is the thing.
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a bit of a soapbox from me because the players who did lean into those tropes super hard in my campaigns were not in my campaigns for very long.
Yeah, that's very true. I played at a lot of tables like that.
Next question. Another minus.
This is from Isaac Martinez. It says, who are Mal's parents?
Mal's parents. Mal's mother is a human. Her name was Amara, and her biological father was an orc. Mal Amara, because the human, her biological mother, human, her husband's name was Malcolm. So as Mal Amara was the two parents' names together. And I had a whole backstory about the orcs raiding the village. Again, I wrote it for me. It didn't need to be in the podcast because it just didn't matter to the podcast, about the orcs had raided the village and that Malcolm had been killed. And then they found out later that Amara was pregnant because pillaging happens. And they didn't know if the baby was because of what had happened during the raid or if it was before that. And so then once she gave birth to Malamara, she died in childbirth. And they're like, oh, actually this was because of an orc. But they kept her.
You keep saying you write all this stuff just for you, but I'm sure we'd have some patrons that maybe would be interested in reading just some of this stuff.
Probably not.
Just putting it out there. Hashtag release the Malamara background.
Release the Malamara papers. It's a long backstory that was really just important to me to understand because that's the way my brain works. But that's who her parents are. Biological. She didn't know them.
I'm sure we won't hear from any of the patrons about this.
Not
Next
at all.
question.
Definitely not.
Blank. All right, Thomas.
Hooray.
Hooray.
This comes from Brenda Lugaresi. What happened to dear Quilliam? Is he still working alone in the Forbidden Library? Did he ever get his raise? Did he ever succeed at becoming an author?
Yeah, so Quilliam.
about that.
About
Oh,
that,
about
he rolls
that.
right now. Oh.
So, oh no, he died like Ralph. No,
Oh, no.
So people were finally made aware of his existence, and they're like, "Oh, we better go down and check on this guy." And Quilliam very happily wrote down a quote-unquote original story about the color yellow, because Quilliam has a good memory, surprisingly, for a magically infused quill, sentient quill here. And still, the unfortunate part is they haven't been able to break his restriction from being able to leave the library.
Unfortunate.
So he's still down there, guarding, and he gets some librarians to come visit. But there are a few librarians who do sneak down there or specifically volunteer to go chat with Quilliam, and they have like a book club that they are writing their own books and read to each other. And Quilliam is mostly just romance novels that he's
Of course,
reading.
naturally.
I actually did have a plan for possibly incorporating Quilliam into the epilogue somehow, but I dropped it pretty quick because I was like, we don't need that. That's a fun mystery.
Yeah, he can have his unhappy ending instead.
That's not unhappy. He's in a book club.
Oh,
Yeah, he just can't leave.
Yeah.
He's not by himself anymore.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch of blood in his drawers.
Oh boy. Next up, we got A+.
Isaac Martinez asked, what are some role-playing tips that you could share with fans of the show?
Probably should limit it to just like one role-playing tip, because this could be a whole Commune with Dungeon Master or like meet
That's a
and
good
Geek
point.
Episode, but probably maybe just like our
Improvisation.
top one from each one of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Here is, I think, the most important thing I learned in improv class. You are not there to make yourself look good. You're there to make everybody around you look good. And if everybody is
very
doing
good at doing that.
yeah, like if I am just focusing on Ned, you're going to look great. I only have one person focusing on making me look good. But if I've got Jacob and Mickey and Thomas all saying, hey, Ned, we're going to make you look good, I have 3 people making me look good instead of just one. So greater than the sum of its parts.
Well said. I think, looking at the question, specifically fans of the show, if you're listening to iCast Fireball, you're probably listening to other, or have listened to other TTRPG podcasts, that if you're at a table, don't expect tabletop play to be like a podcast. I think a lot of podcasts, especially good podcasts, we're very story driven. We care a lot about content. We care a lot about making a good story. And we like to do it because we are storytellers. But I feel like if you're at a table and you're expecting to sit down and your DM's going to be Matt Mercer and you're hanging out with a bunch of voice actors, your table just won't be that way. So find a table with people that you enjoy playing with, and just like, I don't know, lower your expectations for role play at the table, because it's not always going to be like the podcasts.
And it can build off of what Ned said. Like, if you're focused on making other people have fun instead of your own expectations of like, I want it to be like Matthew Mercer, then you will get lost in the fun because you are focused outward and trying to help people instead of feeling like, it's just not what it could be type of a thing.
And just because it doesn't look like a podcast table doesn't mean it's not fun. So finding a table that works for you and not being afraid to walk away from a table that doesn't work for you.
I would say in role-playing, tips of role-playing, avoid talking heads, meaning don't just role-play to talk and just do nothing. Find action in your RP. Meaning, like, I mean, there's been many moments where Lance and Mal, or Fleeple and Mal, or again, Lance and Fleeple have had discussions and they've lasted a little bit of time, but there was always something to gain and to grow from or to go do at the end of it. If it's just we're talking, and especially if it's a disagreement, that's the trickiest part. If you're role-playing and it ends up being some kind of disagreement, you gotta find and you gotta trust to work with the people that you're RPing with, that you're both looking for a solution instead of wanting to prove your side right and my side of the story wins. It's no, how can we form it together? So avoid talking heads. You have to come to an understanding of, I want to find something to gain together from this moment.
Sounds to me like collaboration is the name of the game here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and
maybe we will have an episode of role-playing tips.
That would be good.
I think I'd like that.
Okay, next up, it's a minus.
Character questions. All right, here we go. We have, this is from Matthias Thalion. Did Fleeple become the overseer of the new teleportation circle in Greenest? Also, did the sheep become the heraldic animal of Greenest or the kobold clerics after all these centuries?
Yeah, this isn't something that I mentioned in the epilogue, but, I got to that final capstone ability for my Circle of Sacrifice Druid where I can make a Stonehenge, essentially, that I can use as a teleportation circle. Definitely, the first thing that Fleeple would do after he bought the Hollandaise Inn would be to make a teleportation circle there so that people can stay in touch with him.
I kind of feel like maybe that was like something he just told Lance. And even though he's like part of the Harpers, like Fleeple's part of the Harpers, maybe it's like hey, this is like a secret Harper teleportation circle. It's not part of like the Harper network necessarily. Kind of like a finger gun sort of like teleportation circle, right?
Yeah. With the sheep, I don't think Fleeple would try to push that becoming like a symbol of Greenest or of the Kobold Clerics, but if people felt like they wanted to rally around it, he would not be opposed to it. All right, and next up, another minus.
Character questions. All right, here we go. This is from, I should say, Matthias again, Matthias Talion. He says, what happened to the Helm of Brilliance? Did Lance have to give it up to get Jeremy back? I didn't ever answer that. I didn't actually even think about that. I assumed the helm still was with Lance, maybe not used anymore. Maybe it was I'm putting this away and only really taking it out for if another big crisis happens. That could be, though, something possibly that in order...
Yeah, so like the armor that the veteran puts away in his attic.
Exactly. And then like... kids will uncover it and go through their own adventure. Steven Spielberg movie. I never imagined him giving it up, but that could be a possibility. For Jeremy, it was just a lot of searching and a lot of, I need to find this sword. And I don't know, Jeremy's going to be interesting because Jeremy's a long sword and Flance is a dex guy. He does not have strength, so it's going to be interesting how he'd be able to incorporate Jeremy into his future adventures. But that's a thing for another time.
Right on. Next up, another minus.
Character questions. Alrighty, this is Matthias Talion. It says, did Fleeple return to Candlekeep and reanimate the Thay Wizard? And if so...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. What the heck? And if so, did Quilliam... Apparently Quilliam's back. Did Quilliam have a change of mind and now works for Fleeple? I think it would be fun if two speaking swords and a talking quill had a chat.
Yeah, it would be fun.
That feels like a 3-player idea.
Maybe a little one-shot down the line. Who knows?
The animated object one-shot.
Yeah. We'll have the 3 punks one-shot and then the animated object one-shot.
Perfect.
I think after Fleeple's interactions with his good friend Anzar, he would have realized these Thay Wizards, I should leave them alone. I shouldn't be messing with them. So I believe, the poor soul in the creepy death hallway remains in the creepy death hallway. At least Fleeple's not doing anything. If any of the people who are coming down to visit Quilliam want to deal with that, more power to them. But Fleeple's not getting involved anymore in that.
Well, people are going to have a really hard time getting into the creepy death hallway, into the necromantic section, because those soul stones are
at the bottom of the ravine.
Oh, how terrible. Who could have done that?
Oh, no.
Oh.
So, it'd be very difficult for people to get back in.
Mal took it. It's fine.
Oh, Mal still has them to this day.
Oh, no. She made it through the barrier. She went through without the stone.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So... basically, if you're not a librarian, then you can make it through. All right, next up. A plus.
Did you do everything that you wanted to do the campaign? If not, what did you leave out? From Scott Owens.
I got more out of the campaign than I wanted from it, if I'm being honest. Like I mentioned, I just kind of glossed over it, but there was a pretty long point of time where we were recording the podcast, and I was like, Fleeple already had his arc. He's already spoken to Bahamut. He already knows what it means to be a disciple instead of a zealot. He already knows that he's going to stop Tiamat. That's his goal. He's done. What else am I going to do with Fleeple? And Thomas found interesting ways to keep making me want to be involved with the story. So I got more out of the campaign than I wanted.
Yeah, I was pretty satisfied with the ending.
Easy question.
I hit all the things, yep. Good job, Thomas. Way to incorporate all the things that we wanted to in the campaign.
Good job, Thomas. You don't suck.
That's because he's a cool
See,
DM.
Zach W., we're definitely not done bullying Thomas.
All right, next question. A blank. Thomas, why did you start the podcast to begin with? What motivations were there? This comes from Scott Owens.
What motivations did I have? My motivation was to play a campaign all the way through without a group breaking up, and forcing players to play with me over years and years and years.
Purely selfish.
That was 70% of my motivation for starting a podcast. In fact, if you go to our ICF homepage in the About section, you go, I cast Fireballs of D&D 5e actual podcast, playthrough adventure Tyranny of Dragons, founded by the DM Thomas. I cast Fireballs more than just an excuse to have a D&D group that actually meets consistently. It's, ... Well, anyway, here we are.
Well done, Ned.
That's pretty much, like, a lot of why I wanted to. Obviously, I could have, really incentivized players and improved my craft, but I just needed to play and wanted to play with people that I trusted, and Sneak Attack was a huge influence. So them being able to do it, I was like, we could do something similar to what they're doing, and it would just be fun for just us. And that's what I'm still hoping that we approach the podcast to where it's like mainly just for us, the players, so that we can keep having joy and fulfillment as we go through. Just like when we really started out, because we really, first and foremost, just wanted to tell a story. It just so happened we had mics on at the same time.
And for me, joining it was like, you mean I get to be a player in a campaign? Sign me up. Next up, it's A-.
This one from Isaac Martinez. It says, will we ever get more info on Fleeple's past? And I'm actually going to adapt this real quick to not just be Fleeple, because of the last character question. Is there anything else in backstory that never came up that you're like, hey, from all of our characters, that like, hey, this is a cool little tidbit that just never popped up?
Yeah, so we talked about, is there anything that you regret about the mechanics of your character? The thing that I regret about the backstory of my character is that everything that you heard in the campaign is everything that I had written for Fleeple's backstory. It was basically just Swamp Lizard lives in swamp doing Swamp Lizard things with other Swamp Lizards.
Oh, Shrek.
Yeah, exactly. There was one bit that I don't think actually was revealed during the course of the story, but I mentioned it on a previous Word of Recall about how Fleeple got his fleece in the first place. So that's maybe the only thing that I do kind of wish I had gotten into the story itself, but it's in the previous Word of Recalls. You can go listen to that and hear all of the details there.
Just because this is never going to come up again, I actually had toyed around with the idea of Fleeple running into his previous clan at one point, and the clan being like, you left us and the dragon has been vindictive against us type of a thing, or going a different direction. But after talking with Ned and being like, what player motivations, player desires, I was like, this might not be as high a priority as just the straight up actual campaign of Tyranny of Dragons, like delving into the Harpers, delving into Leosin relationship and things like that.
Yeah, I guess one thing, I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but Fleeple's full name is Fleeple Thrikomanaki, and Thrikomanaki is a draconic word which means nameless, and it's a name that is often adopted by dragonborn paladins when they leave their previous life of evil and devote themselves to a greater cause. So that's an actual little bit of Forgotten Realms lore there.
For Mal, I had a lot of it. Like I said before, I have pages and pages of Malamara's backstory written out. Thomas was very generous in when we recorded the episode where Mal is having the flashback dream and she's talking to Grant, I actually stopped him and I was like, hey, I actually wrote out the dialogue for this. Can I send it to you real fast and we'll just like act it out? And so a lot of that part was like things that I had actually written, and I felt very satisfied being able to like, I saw the scene so clearly in my mind, and so to have it written out, like play out, was really satisfying. So hashtag release the Malamara papers. But most of her story, I was very satisfied with that it got out.
To yourself? Come on, Mickey.
Hashtag release the papers. I'm never doing it, but hashtag.
I'm never doing it, but hashtag.
Yeah.
Get the conversation rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why don't you at me?
Yeah.
Don't
Any
at me,
social
but actually
engagement
do
is
if you
good
really
social
want that, yeah.
engagement.
For Lance, for the only thing that didn't come out that I don't wish it did, but it was like, hey, this was another element. Lance, the city of Neverwinter was invaded by orcs. It's actually part of D&D lore, and that's how Lance learned Orcish, because a lot of orcs incorporated the city for a while. In that, Lance, being an elf, lived through that time. His parents disappeared, and that's how him and his sister became orphans on the street, and then later were picked up by a crime syndicate because they found out, hey, these two kids actually can get around. And Lance never finds out what happens to his parents. So that was something that was in the backstory, never came out, and never kind of developed. And I don't regret it not, but that was just hey, this is another little element to know about Lance. Yes, I did. I thought this will be a really cool way that I can build character moments with Mickey's character. And in the very first episode, finding out that you do not speak Orcish, I thought, what the crap?
I'd like to retract everything I've said about my favorite moments in the campaign and make that my official favorite moment of the campaign, was going, I do not speak I do not
I was
speak
so
Orc.
like,
Jacob's
what?
face was priceless.
He
Being
was
like,
so upset.
I was so like, what is happening? Like, this is the whole reason I took that
logic has
stupid
left
language.
the chat.
I wouldn't have taken that language otherwise.
All right, so now that we are done with character-specific questions and campaign moment questions, let's say that minuses and blanks will be Thomas questions, because we got a lot of those left. All right, it's a minus. So, Thomas. Okay, this is from Definitely Not Batman 72. Was there a plan for the orcs from the first Caldera to reappear in the campaign, like Mud and the Kobolds? I can't remember if we already talked about whether you planned for the Kobolds to return or whether it was decided afterwards.
Yes, there was originally from the Caldera. I touched on this briefly about like this arc of like giving Malamara an opportunity to really delve into that. Things that seem evil aren't necessarily evil. Sometimes they just are. And those orcs seemed like a good introduction to that. But when Mickey was like, or when Malamar was like, I refuse to speak with them, I was like, well, it would be interesting to bring them back at a later time and her see like these things I perceived as evil. Maybe they aren't so evil, and her kind of like come to terms with the orcish part, especially because they already had established a relationship with Lance Thalen. It was clear that they were under duress and that they were forced into this, or else their clan would be destroyed by the Cult of the Dragon. So yeah, but it instead found its way narratively to the orcs in the north with Arathator instead.
All right, next up, it's another minus. From Isaac Martinez. Will the worm box be featured in the next season?
I'm going to take a note from Brandon Sanderson and call that a RAFO.
Blaine,
A
please.
RAFO?
So, meaning I'm not going to answer that right now.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now, on the topic of the worm box, so I went through the trinket list in the player's handbook, and let me read for you what the player's handbook says.
Mm-hmm.
A wooden box with a ceramic bottom that holds a living worm with a head at each end of its body. Thomas, what about that makes you think this needs to have paper mache? The heads are little paper mache masks that look like you guys.
That looked like our party!
So creepy.
I hear
That felt
worm
very
with a head on each
specific.
end of its body, and I'm like, oh, a worm with a worm head on each end of its body.
You know, Sometimes Raffo. I'm just gonna say that. Raffo, okay?
Oh yeah, I'm sure that
panicked.
Hoyt has something to do with this.
Yes, definitely.
Okay,
Design.
next question. This is a plus. Mickey.
If they could go back, what would your character now say to your character at the beginning of the adventure? From Clarity.
Lighten up.
Yeah, older Mal to younger Mal. Something along the lines of encouragement that she'll find family, that she'll find those connections, because she was very bitter about those kind of connections at the beginning.
I think Felipe would tell himself not to drink Leosin's potion.
Will become an addict. Lance, honestly, I know this sounds so like possibly pretentious. I don't think he would, because it's like, I know if I tell you, you won't listen. So you gotta get through this, and it's worth what you're gonna get through.
Lance definitely seemed like he wasn't in the state to take any advice from anything or trust any external advice. He had to experience and go through stuff.
Exactly. But if there was like a quick thing, it'd be lighten up.
Yeah, I guess in a similar vein, like, Fleeple, I think, is the kind of person who, when he gets to the end, he's like, I learned what I did because I experienced it. So would I go back and try and change the experiences I had that led me to where I am? I think he would, though, tell himself to remember to do his mark of sacrificial mark. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah.
The thing that lets him do extra fire damage that I never did.
Ever.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Maybe to invest in Lottie's place or something like that.
Maybe.
Buy stock in Lottie's place.
Buy stock in Lottie's place.
Fleeple would have said, don't let Ralph leave your sight.
Open the box immediately.
Okay, next up. Another plus, and this is the final behind-the-scenes question.
It sure is. Isaac Martinez, will we ever see members of the Jhank squad again?
That's such a there's such finality to that question, you know? Like, will we ever see them again? Like, they're off in the sunset in the distance walking away. And you know what? I just want to say, never say never.
I mean, Jacob, should we reveal your scheme that you came up with in the epilogue?
Well, if you obviously heard in the epilogue with their tombstone, there is plantings for other adventures that they have gone on.
Yeah.
It does say literally other adventures, but it also mentions what's the vault's name again?
The Doom Vault.
The Doom Vault.
Doom Vault.
In the Dead of Thay, which is a whole actually adventure you can look up. And I thought, because I started looking up what is a vague adventure I can name that ties somehow to what they were doing, but is different than the cult's back. And it was, we had to deal with Thay wizards. What if somehow they were angry about that? And so I threw that in just to again have a opportunity for a satisfying question that people can create in their own mind of how that can play out, but also the who knows question too, because that is a very complicated adventure.
Yeah. Jake, you kind of touched on it earlier, and I'd like to reiterate that's one of my favorite things about the adventures of D&D is that the characters live on. At the end of the story, unless a character died, if you get to the end, your character, it doesn't normally end in like a finality. Even ours that ended with like a gravestone scene, there are allusions to other adventures. And I like that idea that these characters we create just live on in the ethos.
There's always an afterlife with other planes in the here, so maybe there's an adventure to be had there as well.
We shall see. All right. Now we only have Lonely Thomas questions left. 3 left. We're getting close to the end. Okay. This comes from Josh. Were there any cool items or encounters you had prepped in Season 1 that didn't come to fruition and or weren't found due to super low investigation rolls or the players just choosing not to investigate something? So the example that Josh gives, in the first caldera, after they found the eggs and the 2 half-orcs that basically surrendered immediately to Mal, there was a room off to the side that didn't end up being investigated, or the roll was too low and they found nothing. Any neat story beats that were ready to go, but we never got to see.
But that one specific.
I think...
Yeah.
I think specifically in that room, there was another room.
We had like gone over to the corner.
Yes.
And we're like,
yes.
there's something here. And all of us failed our perception checks.
Are
We're
you
like,
ready for it?
I guess there's nothing.
Are you ready?
Yes.
If you went up, it was a trap door into Mondath's room.
Oh,
There was a
sneaky, sneaky
connection.
way.
There was a connection to the room. We thought that there
'Cause
was.
Yeah.
I can't remember if we said it in the episode, but all of us were like, we can see on the Roll20 map that there's something here.
There's something there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
there
man.
absolutely was. It was meant to be like directly into Mondath's room that you could have snuck into, bypassed all of the guards, and done just a crap ton of sneak attack damage on her.
Nice.
Well, we got the kill box, so that was
I know that actually worked. I
Right.
love it when a plan
Yeah.
works out.
surprising all of us.
Yeah, everyone's like, we're just gonna run on it.
Yep.
Just book it.
Yeah.
We'll just go so
Um,
fast that they won't get us.
But there was I was a little surprised that the dragon tooth was not investigated by the players, or more interest was not given to the dragon tooth, like the glowing magical dragon tooth that changed Mondath. I thought that would be an interesting story beat to find. And although they found it and it did come up, it just never seemed like it was of interest or of focus to the players here at any given moment. Like they weren't like, I want to take this to somebody to get like a praise.
Didn't Lance
or, like,
have it
really
as a
dive-
secret for a long time?
Yeah, he did.
What again?
The dragon
The
tooth?
dragon tooth
Yes.
that
I
Mondath
think
stabbed.
he
He
never
found
told
it and
you
he
guys.
didn't tell anybody about it
I only gave
for
it
a
to
long
Ralph.
time.
Oh, well then there you go.
Yeah, I didn't.
So I guess that was on me for maybe I could have introduced the dragon teeth a little bit more to then give the opportunity for the other players to dive into that. But that was really it.
There was, I can't remember the exact moment. There was a moment where I thought about, like, we were in a dire straits in a battle, and it wasn't the Mondath battle, but there was a moment where I was like, maybe I'll use the tooth, and we'll see where that takes us. But it never came to fruition. But yeah.
Well, that would have permanently changed you.
Yeah.
That would have permanently altered your entire stats.
Here comes the bar.
would
And
have.
your
Yeah,
alignment
seriously.
and stuff. I guess there was another moment where you didn't perceive that Lottie was a lich.
Oh
That's
yeah,
right.
we
When
kind of came back to that at the end.
that as well. Yeah.
Oh, we should probably mention spoilers in this Word of Recall episode.
It's a little late.
The last 5 minutes. Spoilers ahead, by the way.
All right. Next up, from Ernaguna999, also back to the Caldera. What happened to the dragon eggs that were found and given to Leosin?
Yeah, this is interesting because there's definitely a lot of political power here. Leosin to the Harpers, and then the Harpers, they had to bring it to the Council of Waterdeep. The Council of Waterdeep, there was some people who were like, we need to destroy these eggs, and some were like, we need to harvest these eggs, and some were saying, no, they should be raised in captivity, or they should be, it's the natural order, the Emerald Enclave being like, no, it's the natural order for them to be released into the wild, just not under the evil of the Cult of the Dragon. Let them make their own choices, and if they choose evil, therefore. So there was a lot of like back and forth, but eventually, since it was tied up in bureaucracy, those eggs mysteriously disappeared from somebody and were just gone. And it would have been the Arcane Brotherhood that actually took them.
So the real bad guy was bureaucracy the whole time.
Whole time.
But don't we already know that?
We had 4 Councils of Waterdeep episodes, for sure.
Live dragons that we can harvest or raise to ourselves in secret or whatever, yes, please. They're a pretty selfish group. They're a pretty we are only in it for ourselves type of organization.
You don't say. All right. And now, the final question.
Final
We made it.
question.
Okay, this comes from Linnea. There seemed to be a huge buildup with Malamara's backstory, which I absolutely loved. Yeah, so this question is addressed to Thomas, but might actually be more of a Mickey question. Let's see. It almost felt to me that you weaved it in such a way with Malamar's brother that he would be brought back into the story at some future point. The question is this. Was there ever a plan to bring him back? Was there a choice that Malamar would have made that would have presented her brother re-entering the story? If so, what and when was it, and what were all the details?
So, Malamar's brother I did have a plan to bring him back, which is why I did the flashback to introduce him with like all the stats, because Surprise, that flashback happened right before the Bloody Bowl. And guess who the champion of the Bloody Bowl was?
Oh.
Your brother.
Whoa. That would have been totally different.
As you kept fighting and rising the ranks,
And then Fleeple had to go and cast Star Platinum.
you would have you would have
That would have
fought
been
your
really
brother,
cool.
and it would have mirrored the battle that you
Yeah.
had back in the flashback.
Especially because she was like kind of possessed. And oh, that would have been
Exactly.
cool.
Yeah, and both of you would have given into you would have both given into your rage and despair over so long of a time. It's like, what actually would have happened? Would anybody have snapped out? But that's not the direction the players wanted to go. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to force it.
Yeah.
So going back to that question about, do you have any regrets about the things you did in the campaign?
We needed to get out of there.
I have some regrets
okay.
now.
Fleeple said, I'm tired of this. We're out. We're out.
Oh, man.
Hey, sometimes chaos just needs to be injected into, because there was a lot of talking heads that I was doing. I was trying to be like a suave, like sleazy moment.
That
you
moment
guys,
of the campaign for
like,
sure.
you guys are working for me. Like, I've got all the power right now. And Fleeple's like, wanna bet?
Which is a little bit of like the improv tabletop tips of the yes-anding of just like moving the story forward and going with the punches and keep it moving.
Yeah, I will admit, Thomas, this is just to all of the evidence that you did such a good job of portraying that character. I hated him so much. I just really wanted to kill that character.
You did.
So
You really
bad.
did.
That was the point. The point was to be like, I have never like played like a true sleazeball, so I'm gonna just try and be a sleazeball.
You did a
And it
great
was
job.
Apparently, really successful.
pissed off
Just
Dad.
like, wow, he
Yep.
is despicable. Death.
Yeah.
Yep. Man.
That's
well,
cool.
In
Yeah.
an alternate universe. Oh, well.
That's okay. I'm still pretty satisfied with it, with the ending.
But I mean, who's to say like that maybe he did die, maybe he didn't die? So
I mean, he died off screen.
He died off screen.
But did he really?
I mean, I guess
I mean,
not.
Mal
really did
found
leave it up to
evidence that
Thomas.
maybe
I
he
always
died,
write in
but-
characters into my stories that could or could not be pulled from to bring into the story at any time that I don't have any emotional connection to. So
I know in mine, in that being a possibility, I know for just like, hey, what could we do? I know I had a plan for if Grant came back, it would actually, I had a rough draft of, does that create a rift between Malamar and Lance? Because Lance is like,
that could have been cool too.
I lost my sister, you lost your brother, you get him back. She's
but you
never
don't get
coming
your
back.
sister back.
just her vision is back. And that was like something I was like, ooh, how could I play on that? But then it never came
That
to
would
fruition.
have been
So it was
cool,
never
yeah.
like oh, we're gonna do this. So that was an interesting little thing going on.
I'm glad you
in the
thought
background.
about that. I did not think about that at all. Mostly because I just didn't know if he ever was going to come back. And so he was just kind of, I guess we'll just deal with it however Thomas wants to bring it back. That's really cool, Jake.
Well, what fun going into this, diving it, discovering our joys, our highs and lows. Ned discovering a lot of regrets, apparently.
A lot, yeah.
Regrets.
All I'm saying is, when we find him in the Doom Vault in the Dead of Thay in this future one-shot,
Mhm.
I will feel better about myself. Wink, wink,
Oh my
Thomas.
gosh.
Oh, man.
What
no,
a great twist.
It's been a ton of fun. A lot of surprises, a lot of stuff I've been holding on to, and surprises that I've learned here as well. Ned, Jacob, Mickey, this has been fun. This has been our player epilogue, so to speak, of wrapping up season 1, pretty much to its fullest conclusion that we can do here. But listeners, thank you. 44 questions come and gone here. And that's not to say that you should stop sending your questions in. If you have more, please, by all means, send them on in. Got our email, icastfireball2020@gmail.com. We have our patron exclusive Discord where we answer questions every day or every time that they're asked. And we are really looking forward to creating new theories and starting into season 2 in not too long. Here, 1 month from now. Well, not 1 month for us, but 1 month for you listeners here. I really don't know if there's anything else to say.
You will be delighted. That's what else there is to say.
That's right.
United.
Like us on our social medias. Just spread the word. Get this podcast out there. Start it on fire. I will say, if you do want to get some more tidbits of season 2, join our Patreon exclusive Discord. Also, some sneak peeks of some possible hints that we had here. Ned mentioned me possibly being a player. If you want to learn a little bit more about that, jumping into our Patreon exclusive Discord is going to be the fastest and easiest way to find out that information. But as always, I'm Thomas, your DM, and around the table we've had
Mickey, and I played Malamara.
Jacob, and I played Lance Thalen.
I'm Ned, and I will be playing Redacted.
Let's keep that fire going, everybody, and we'll see you all in a month.